Okay, I guess I can start with the Windows 10 VM. I'll share my screen with you. Okay, so Windows 10. Okay, so to start, always go through the forensics questions because, well, first read the README and then you would go through all the forensics questions because sometimes the forensics questions have questions about like different users that you might have to delete later on. So let's go through the first one. So this one essentially asks about the location of a specific, like where you can configure the minimum pin length. So for this, you can either like search it up, Google it essentially, or like go through your local policies and then just search for every single policy like related to this. But that takes a pretty long time. So I would just say Google it. You can get through a lot of the forensics questions through Googling, but for some of them, there are some like neat tricks that you can get them done faster. Second one, okay, this is similar, like in terms of Googling. It's a Caesar cipher, and then it's called the ROT13. So if you don't know what this is, essentially it's just like taking every letter and rotating it 13 characters based on like a chart that's specific to the Caesar. The way I got this answer is I just put it into an online decoder. So you can just search up Caesar cipher rotation 13 decoder, plug this in, you should get that answer. Our last forensics question is, what is the SHA-256 sum of this image file in the directory? So for this, I guess you could go search up a SHA converter, but there's actually a command prompt command that's pretty nice. So okay, so it's called serutil. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I just call it serutil. So, and then command is hash file, which will essentially create the like SHA part of it. And then you want to put in the path to the file. So as we can see, the file name is redxii.png. So let me search for that file. Okay, I see it's right here. I can copy the full path of that location. So it'll give me like C users, redxii, and then pictures. So if I go back to here, copy that in. And then the last part of this is the type of like hash you want to convert it to. So in this case, it's the SHA hash. So I'm going to type in SHA-256. And then as you can see here, it'll say, this is your hash of this file. And then it'll give you the hash. So that should be the same as this. And that's how you get the hash for a file. I think you can put in like any hash for this. So if you want to get like a different type of hash, just change that specific part and you'll get like that type of hash, if that makes sense. So moving on, let me pull up the README. So in the README, it lists a bunch of users and then their like position. So like admin, standard user, and so on. So you can see all the authorized users essentially. So to get points for these, you can pull up the users section. So let me type in users, and then you can go to add, edit, remove other users. And here you should be able to view all the users and then change all their permissions. So for example, let's say Biggs was actually like an admin, which in this case he isn't, but I would let him, you can change his account type to an admin, click OK, and you'll get points for that. So essentially it's the same thing for all of these. Make sure all the account types are as they are in the README, and make sure that all of these are authorized users. If someone happens to like not be an authorized user, so you want to like remove them. So I'm not going to remove anyone here because I already went through and removed people. But if you want to remove someone, you'd click remove with yes. And then it'll say delete account and data, and you're gonna go ahead and click that, and then delete the user. And then lastly, after you remove people, you're also gonna wanna add people if someone is on the authorized users list, but you don't see them anywhere. So you can click add someone here, and then you can put in like username, password, all the required stuff. This will take a second to load, but essentially that's the process of adding users. I don't know why this is taking so long, but like if you do that, you should be able to just put in the username, password, and it'll create a user and show up on this list right here. So next, what you want to do is passwords, right? Because you need every single user to have a password, a secure password, and you can do that through a different location. So if I go to control panel, and then there's a user accounts right here. And then you can manage all the accounts. So if I click manage another account, it'll list all the accounts here. So everything I did on the previous screen, you can also do it on here. I personally like the way the other screen is formatted, so I use that. But feel free to use this as well. And then so let me click on someone. You can change the name, password, account type, all of that stuff. It's just a different GUI. And click manage another account to do all this. So like I said before about passwords, you can click on someone, click create a password if they don't have a password, or if they do have a password, it should say like change the password instead. This person also doesn't have a password, but here, you can say change the password. It'll take you to a screen where you can put in the new password, confirm it, and so on. And that should get you points. So Cyber Patriot, I don't think they give you points for every single user, if I remember correctly. They might, but like as long as you just make sure every user has a password, every user is the correct admin type, like account type, and all that stuff, you should get all the user points. So in the training image, another way to, oh yeah, so you have to change password settings. That's very important. So let me pull up my run, which once again is Windows key R, and I'll pull up secpol.msc. To load. All right, so under security settings, you can go to account policies and then password policy. So this is where you can change password age, length, complexity requirements, all that stuff. So here I have everything set up. Like these are pretty standard numbers, so make sure you have some, like you can just put in these numbers for every single competition. So you want 5 passwords remembered, 90 days is the maximum password age, days is the minimum password age, minimum password length of 8, and you want to enable all of these requirements so that every user has all these requirements. And you can keep this disabled because you don't want to store your passwords. Next, let's talk about, I think there's this specific thing you have to disable. So logging on with Control-Alt-Delete. I don't remember if I mentioned this in a previous lecture, but you always want to make sure you disable that. So also through SecPol, if you go to local policies and then security, you can see it lists all these types of like permissions policies. So if you scroll down a bit, you'll see the interactive logon section. And then there should be a thing that says do not require, yeah, here, do not require Control-Alt-Delete. So you double click on that. You can enable it or disable it, make sure to disable it, apply it, and you can get your points for that. So another important part of this sorry, I can't talk. The training round was firewall. If you pull up the firewall, you need to make sure it's enabled. So this previously was like all turned off, and at the top, there's a button that said use recommended settings. So if you click on that, and then like you should get like this little icon next to it, and that'll like, you have to say okay, and then it'll bring you to the screen and it should automatically pull up everything that's connected and you can get your points for that. And then lastly, that should be most of the points, but you want to make sure that your services, like all your services are authentic, like not sketchy. So in this VM, there were 2 services, I believe, that were unauthorized. If I remember, it was, I can't remember the names of it, but it should be on this one report. So you get points for removing NetStumbler and Wireshark. So essentially to remove programs, there is a little place where you can click add or remove programs. And then you can go here, click on any one, click uninstall, go through that entire process, which will just be like clicking OK all the way to the end. And then it'll delete that from your VM and you'll get the points for those. Okay, well, it's probably because I had it open for that long, but so I think that was everything on this VM. So you got your 3 forensics questions, removing 2 users, changing these 2 account types, making sure this user has a password, so essentially just creating a password for that user. This is in the SecPol section where, in the password policies, where you would set all the password requirements. This is in the same location. This is also in SecPol, as I showed, where under like security, I believe, and then the interactive logon, do not require. Firewall, turn that on always, and then you can look through your program, see which things look suspicious, and get rid of those. So that should have been all the Windows 10. Does anyone have a question about any of those things? I can also share my screen and pull up the.
Go back to the password settings again. The password settings, like what are the recommended password settings for Windows?
Okay, so if you remember what I had, I can pull that up again. Give me 1 second. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Okay, so these should be your standard password settings. You want to do 5 passwords for password history. Maximum is 90, minimum is 30. Minimum password length is 8, and then enable and disable. Is that good?
Would this apply to all operating systems or just Windows?
I think that should be standard across all of them, because I know it's the same for Windows Server as well. Okay, how do you do the Control-Alt-Delete? So that is also in secpol.msc, which again you can pull up by Windows key and the R. So if you go into local policies, security options, if you scroll down a bit into the interactive logon section, you'll see there's this option called do not require Control-Alt-Delete, and click on that, disable it, and that should be your thing. And then, do you still need the firewall? I can still go over that. So essentially you can just search up firewall and then Windows Defender firewall should show up. And then you can just click use recommended settings and that should set everything up perfectly for you. Any other Windows 10 questions? Or do you guys want to move on to Windows Server now? If we're good with that. Okay, I'll take that as we're on to Windows Server. Let me shut this one down. Answer. So Server is pretty similar to Windows 10. I believe most of the points you could have gotten the same way. So let's go through forensics questions first, like last time. Okay, so this one is asking to decode this little string that is encoded using base 64. So there's probably a way to do it using your command prompt, like I showed the SHA 256 in the Windows 10. But for this one, if I use like an online decoder, if you just search up base 64 decoder, you should be able to get that running or like get your answer to it. And the answer was presented by the Shinra Electric Power Company. The second one was a recent system audit indicated that there's a prohibited CSV file stored that contains sensitive user account information stored in plain text. So for this one, what you want to do is you can go to your File Explorer, because it'll obviously be a file. Clicking on this PC, it'll search your entire PC for any of the files. Click View and then Hidden Items. So that means it'll show all your hidden items in case that like anything is hidden. And then you're gonna type in star.csv. So essentially what this star does, it means like it'll pull up any file that has the CSV ending, but like it can have any beginning, if that makes sense. So like you can have a.csv, temporary.csv, like any beginning part, whatever that name is, it doesn't matter as long as its extension is .csv. Well, let's wait for this to load. Okay, wait, actually, so the file here, I believe its name was like user passwords or something .csv. But an important part of this is you want to make sure that you delete that file just because you don't want your passwords lying around for everyone to see. So always delete that file. And I actually deleted it right now, or when I was going through this. So like it should show up at the top, or you can just sort it if you want to. But you can see the file name right here. So let's say this was my actual file. I can click Open File Location. And then I can just copy location. So go to properties, and then you'll see the location is this. So you can just copy that, put it here, and save it, and that should be your answer. So for this one, its location was, I think, under this user, I believe. But always make sure to delete files like those that have any sensitive information, because that is not good. So last forensics question. The members of Avalanche have separately relocated. These members have been added to the remote desktop group. Okay, so you're trying to find which users are in a specific group. So what you want to do for that is there's this manager called lusr.mgr.msc, and this should contain all your users and groups. So I'm going to go into groups and then check out the remote desktop. So here you can see there's a group called remote desktop users. Once I click on it, you can see the three members are C High Wind, C Sith, and like however you say that. So I just went ahead and copied each of these users onto here, and then you can get your points through that. So essentially for this, all of your groups are stored here. So you can just look at any of one of them, see who, like which members are on here, and stuff like that. Moving on, I think we can work with users, like check through those. So let me look the users. So users here is the same as Windows 10. You would click Manage Another Account. You can see all your users right here. Make sure they're all password protected. Same, like make sure they're the right user account type. You can change the account type, password, name, etc. I think in here, you had to add a user via Valentine. So to add a user, you would click Add a User Account, and then type in username, password, confirm password, and then add the user, it'll add it in. I think the README also stated for via Valentine to be in a specific group. So before, you know how we were in this LUSR MGR place, so which again you can bring up by your Windows plus R key. I don't remember, I think they said Avalanche group, you need to add it to your Avalanche group. So what you would do is click on Avalanche, click add to add a user, and then here you can type in your username. So I'll type the Valentine, and then check name. So if the user does exist on your laptop, it'll bring up like the actual like input type, and then you can just click OK, and it'll add your user to the group, and it'll show up right here. So I didn't add it because I already had it in the group, but that's what you would do. Let's see what else. Okay, so another way to gain points in this was also through the stackpole manager. So if you remember in Windows 10, we disabled the logging on with Control-Alt-Delete. So in this, there's something similar, but you want to limit a specific account policy. Let me see if I can find it. So if you go to accounts, you want to limit the local use of blank passwords to console login only, and make sure that is enabled. And then you always want to make sure that is enabled on every single competition. Sometimes you'll get points, sometimes you won't, but always make sure that's enabled. Next, let me see, what else was there? Oh yeah, so you want to make sure to disable your FTP service. So there are two ways to do this. I can show you both ways. So the first way is your Control-R once again and type in services.msc. And then if you scroll down, the name of the FTP service is Microsoft FTP service. You scroll down, you'll see Microsoft FTP service, double click on it, change its startup type to disabled, and then make sure you click the stop button, apply it, okay, and that's essentially how you stop an FTP service. The other way to do this is by going into your server manager. So let me go into server manager. I just typed it up in the search bar. So you would click on manage, remove roles and features. Remove roles, that should be a location. Oh yeah, remove roles and then features, I believe. So if you scroll down, there should be a IIS thing, and then you just want to uncheck it. Okay, so you see this IIS web core. At least I believe it's that. So you want to uncheck it, and then you'll get your points through that. Let me check. Oh yeah, and also here, your web server IIS, uncheck it. Your FTP is disabled. Last, I think there's one more way to get points. I can't remember. Let me pull up the scoring report. All right, so we went through the forensics questions. We removed these users, changed the account permission on this, created a new user, added them to a group, added a password to this user account. Oh yeah, so password length and that stuff is basically the same as Windows 10. So you would go into your secpol, accounts, password policy, and use the same numbers as before to get the points for that. This we did through the same secpol, but we went into security policy and then limited blank passwords. FTP we did with server manager or services.msc. So this point, I think I mentioned it at the beginning, but you know how one of the forensics questions asked about a file with all your user accounts? So you wanted to delete that file because that's very insecure for your network. And then lastly, there was one program in here that you had to delete, and that was RetroArch. So once again, if you go into like uninstall services, you can go into uninstall services. I can't spell uninstall. Okay, and remove programs. There should be a way to delete that. So it's gone right now because I did it, but there would have been RetroArch right here. Would have clicked on it, uninstall, and that's that.